our people to free themselves, but we had to pause and then first make it clear that it is indeed corruption, and we are trying to ensure that we have integrity before we claim to give integrity to the people. So yeah, it has been a cost, a huge political cost, but it's worth it if we have to be leaders worth our salt.
All right, Mr. President. Precious, let me take on the president. I like that you mentioned that the leader of opposition, Right Honorable Joe Senyanyi, recently said, when you fight corruption, it certainly will fight back. Mr. President, given the country we are in, where the majority of us are actually poor, do we have what it takes to fight back when corruption fights back for us?
Yes, you do. You have what it takes. Your morality, your integrity. You have what it takes. You only need to make that firm choice. It's a costly choice because it comes with intimidation, it comes with brokenness, but at the end of the day, it comes with pride that does not equate to anything. So I want to encourage you and all other young people that you have what it takes to fight that corruption, because it can be fought and it can be defeated.
Right. I want to thank everyone who is listening in. We are having a talk with His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu about corruption. Of recent, we have had youths from all walks of life, leaderless, religionless, partyless, members of NUP, members of the NRM, members of the FDC, coming together and saying, you know what, we have an urgent issue, which is corruption at hand. And I want to thank every youth, wherever you are, and you've decided to take chance or an opportunity in this. Mr. President, given what we've known about General Museveni, he aids and abates all wrongs. He's diametrically, he has been diametrically opposed to the position he has been taking. For example, in 1986, he said, the problem of Africa and in Uganda in particular is leaders that overstay in power. And he has overstayed in power. He has been coming out to condemn corruption, but again condone it. Why do you think Museveni has been adamant to act against corruption, Mr. President?
On a platform like this, I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible, but again, because I'm talking to young people, I want to be as blunt and as honest as possible.
Mr. President, we have always known you for being a realistic person.
Yeah,
so we hope you
I believe that what stops General Museveni from practically fighting corruption is because he is corrupt himself. He was corrupted with power. There's this famous saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. General Museveni has absolute power, and that absolute power corrupted him absolutely. He cannot fight corruption because corruption is his biggest tool of control. He will pay lip service to the fight against corruption, but he will not fight corruption because it is corruption that is keeping him in power. It is the abuse of the law, which is corruption, that is keeping him in power. It is the rewardism, policy that he has, where even the most corrupt people, for as long as they can serve his purpose, he will keep them in office. I mean, look at Anita Among, a person that is not even politically smart, that she gives herself out every time. She has confessed to looting public funds numerous times, but she continues to wield power. You've seen Mike Mukola, you've seen Jim Muwonge, and many others. Corruption is what General Museveni uses. As a matter of fact, he has also said it numerous times that Anita Among helps him buy off opposition leaders to his side. So that still, will show you that General Museveni is not going to fight corruption. You've heard Mulyagonja, the former IGG, who said most corruption scandals are traced to General Museveni's footprint. Doorstep. I was talking about the numerous scandals that you've seen, the Global Fund scandal of Jim Muwonge and Mike Mukola, up to the tune of 1.4 trillion was lost in between there. Nothing happened to them. They were instead rewarded. You remember the story of the junk helicopters in 1997, 45.4 billion lost, but because Salim Saleh helps him control the military, he ended there. It ended that way. The pension scam of 2010, you remember the likes of Jimero Amafa. You remember the Chogam scandal, including Sam Kutesa, his brother-in-law, something like that, including Gilbert Bukenya, including the likes of Nasser Sira. But because these people have always been his anchor in the population, you've had the scandals in the office of the Prime Minister. You've had the Validam scandal. You've had NSSF Temangalo scandal. You've had scandal after scandal. But this is Uganda's way of life, in fact, way of death. So General Museveni has no will whatsoever to fight corruption because it's his tool.
But Honorable Chagulanyi, you speak of Museveni, who recently, opened up an anti-corruption unit at URA. He has the IGG, he has the State House anti-corruption unity. He had the anti-corruption work. Don't you think he's willing to
before you even go on with all the institutions or pseudo institutions that he sets up? These are actually also windows of theft. I mean, you tell me that you are setting up a new anti-corruption unit to oversee the Uganda Revenue Authority, which loses 10 trillion every year, 10 trillion of our money, But again, the person in charge of that unit is it David Karemera, the same person that was convicted, is a convicted tax fraudster. He's a convicted thief. But now you appoint a thief to ensure that nobody steals. It is a joke. It is an absolute joke.
I think Mr. Museveni is playing the game of set a thief to catch a thief. President Bobiwine, please speak about the cynicism from some influential people about the fight against corruption.
You see, you're throwing about words extravagantly. For example, you're calling them influential. They don't influence us. They don't influence us because we no longer follow them. Yes, there's been a lot of cynicism, and that is guilt talk. That is guilt talk from these corrupt members of parliament, corrupt leaders, including religious and traditional leaders. They know the truth, but because they are corrupt, and you see the corrupt people always know which kind of engine to grease. So they keep fueling that engine. No wonder corrupt people will steal money and go build the churches. Today, a church was being launched by Thomas Kaebwa, the same person who is under question. So you won't fail to hoodwink a few people. Radio presenters, TV presenters, so-called analysts, those armchair analysts, they will speak very good English, quote very smart laws in defense of corruption. Of course, ultimately, it fails that they have to deploy brute force to protect corruption. But all that cynicism is meant to do what young people these days call, I'm trying to look.
Mr. President, are you still with us?
Hello, can you hear me very well?
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, I was saying that the people that are trying to be cynical are trying to do what the young people of these days call gaslighting. They're trying to make the people that are speaking up against corruption have a false sense of wrongness. They're trying to make them believe that they actually don't understand what they're talking about. That is the level of intellectual dishonesty that is being employed to defend corruption. trying to victimize the victim.
Okay, Mr. President, you know, we've read comments where people say that someone that has been caught red-handed in corruption should deserve death penalties or should be jailed for this long. Some are so extreme to the extreme, some are too lenient, too weak. Mr. President, help us understand, what is NUP's policy about corruption or on corruption?
NUP's policy, like most political parties, I really don't want to talk about what we write or what we say. I want to talk about what we do. Of course, I will tell you that we have a zero tolerance policy to corruption, but that will only be words until we act on it. The NRM and all other political parties speak, you know, very morally until it's time to act. For us, we don't only speak about it, but we act with the little power that we have. And if we are to get more power, then you will see what moral people use power for. Of course, moral actions.
Thank you, President. We want to thank every Ugandan out there that is listening to us. We're still taking on His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. You know, we say the legitimate president of Uganda. We're talking about, you know, Uganda's corruption scourge. Mr. President, please help us understand what is keeping us away the informal sector from the corruption peaceful protests. You know, and what is the division? What causes the division in perspective of class? You know, people look at corruption differently.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very important question. I hope we have some ghetto people on here as well. What is keeping away the Juakari, the informal sector, the ghetto people, the Kabayas of this world, the Edimutwes of this world? What is keeping them away? You see, we live in a society that is only uniting. And I'm very glad that's one victory of our generation, bringing together a generation, different tribes, different mentalities, different levels of education, different religious affiliations, but all of them united by the pain that they share. Clearly, we've all been sharing the same pains, but we had not connected as we are seeming to connect now. Initially, when myself and other people threw in our hat and came into leadership, the first stereotype was, Bobiwine now, and all that kind of thing. Of course, ultimately, we bonded, although there has been still a separation of mentalities, where when towards the 2021 election, you saw a lot of common people, a lot of border riders, market vendors, Batembe, and all that coming into the politics. This scared the hell out of General Museveni, that for the first time, you saw drones, you saw abductions, you saw sodomy, you saw googling out eyes and plucking out teeth and cutting off of limbs. You saw extrajudicial killings because General Museveni was so scared. And for a very long time, the common people have been, you know, suffering, of course, fighting in their own common way that they understand. You will note that there was a time, sometime last year, when Dr. Besigye was so angry that he said that you, the intellectuals, are the problem of Uganda, because once you are comfortable in your, you know, 2-bedroom house and a 6-figure salary, you are all right until you're not all right. So this was noted over time, that common people reached a time and thought our intellectuals are only on Twitter, are only on Facebook, are only online, and they don't come out. And again, because corruption has been so dressed out well, I don't call it corruption. Common people don't call it corruption. They call it theft, because it is theft. Somebody steals a whole road. Somebody steals a hospital. steal the school. Now they steal futures of the young people. So when the intellectuals, and please pardon me when I call all of you intellectuals, we live in a country where even when one speaks good English is regarded an intellectual. So when you rose to the occasion, the common people needed to connect with the theme. For them, they see corruption as a problem. But again, they have bigger problems. They don't even have the right to be human beings. They don't have a right to exist. They are fighting to exist. So according to them, corruption, especially the way they understand it, did not seem a very easily understandable problem. And that is why myself and many other people that explain have done and continue to do a great job to break it down for the people. I'm very happy about artists like King Saha, like Azawi, and many others. They've made it easy for the common people to understand. And with time, I see the two sides bonding and acting together.
Thank you, Mr. President. I love the fact that you help us understand this deeply. Honorable, tusobola tutya okumenyawo that bridge that is between, you know, abageto feno wansi gye tufa kwoteeka ate ne bali bamambala masuuti ne tuba nga fena we are on the same page about corruption.
Wedde omanyi n'Oluganda. Ya kirungi nnyo kizaamu amaanyi wabula kye tulina okukola kwe kumakinga sure breaking down to make people understand. Ekintu ekyasinga okuleeta abantu mu byobufuzi, especially when people power and NUP came, kwe kuba nti bringing politics ku street, omuntu n'amanya ebyobufuzi bimukwatirako wa, n'amanya nti abo bonna byabufuzi balaba be basalawo bbeeyi gyagulamu sukaali, be basalawo bbeeyi gyagulamu akawunga, ate be basalawo mu ddwaliro waliyo omulagala oba tewali. Kati nekino ekya corruption omuntu weetaaga omunnyonnyola nti oyo Anita Amongo essente zabbye oba ssente ze bamismanaginze emiliyoni 5 okweguliramu generator, ezo zibadde zisobola okuyamba health center yewammwe Rukunjiri oba ekanoni eggomba n'ebeera ng'erwaninga, zibadde zisobola okusasula abasawo. Ekyo bwe abantu bakina ki understandinga tekijja kulwanyisa corruption yokka, wabula kijja bayamba abantu okugetinga involved. Nzize nga nkinyonnyola abantu bonna nti gali amawanga amalala tegakulakulana kuba abantu bago bayine abakulembeze bayine empisa, no, kubanga abantu bali holding accountable. I'm trying to say that we need to make it clear to the young people of Uganda, especially from the ghettos, that other countries do not develop, or leaders in other countries don't do good simply because they are good. No, but because people hold them accountable. I would not say that President Ruto is a very good man, but he's doing good, he's respecting Kenyans because Kenyans are not taking crap from him. Now that we need to break it down for across all classes for them to understand that it affects us all if we sit back and relax, and it benefits us all if we rise to the occasion and equally demand what belongs to all of us. And finally, on that matter, it is important for all people to know that they are all taxpayers. You don't have to be a rich person to think that you're a taxpayer. Even the soda that you bought, the salt that you buy, everything you pay tax. So everybody should look at it, at themselves as a full taxpayer. So that is going to take people like you, Dr. Morgan, people like you, Good Girl, people like you, Aiden, and all of you friends that are here to try break it down more and more and more for the people. Like I was saying, for me, I see only positivity. When I see people like Judith Ad, when I see people like Saint Nelly, when I see people like religious leaders who are outspoken, people like Azawi, voices that are listened to, breaking this down to the common people, their fans who are in millions will follow suit, and they will sometimes even understand it better and pay even more interest. And that way, we'll be able to go from one step to another.
Thank you, Honorable Chagulanyi. Mr. President, you've talked about Kenya, you've talked about President Ruto letting the Gen Zs protest. But as we all know, it's a public secret where there is a swarm of people, demonstrating or protesting to capture the attention of the government or the president in power. There will be some self-seekers. We shall not say generally that Commission. Mr. Chagulanyi, if you were in power now, would you let the Gen Zs raise and demonstrate against corruption? And looking at the demands they have, for example, they are calling for the resignation of the Speaker of Parliament, which is the demand number one. They are calling for the resignation of the 4 backbench commissioners. They are calling for the reducing of the number of parliament members. They are calling for any member of parliament that has been caught involved in any corruption scandal should resign and be investigated. Number 5, they call for a live audit for all the members of parliament and publicizing it. Number 6, they call for the cutting of salaries and allowances of all parliamentary members to 3 million, but also call for allowing Ugandans continuously, demonstrate or exercise their democratic right of peaceful assembly. Are these relevant?
Of course they are relevant. Of course they are relevant. I'll answer the first question. Would I let the Gen Zs protest? I want you people to know that your right is not given to you by the state. You have it. It's given by God, but you also have it enshrined in the Constitution. And this generation must be the last generation to even think that the right to protest for a right is granted by state. Nobody is going to call you to protest against them. You just have that right, and you should never let anybody make you believe otherwise. So it would not be upon me as president or anybody as president to allow people to protest or not. It is their right, About whether the calls of the young people are justifiable and achievable. Absolutely, there's nothing that determined people cannot achieve. Absolutely nothing. And history has